As a music journalist and someone who's sort of on the scene and been watching it for 30, 40 years now, if there are two albums that stand out as representative of the teens, or whatever we're going to call the decade pre-pandemic, Universal Beings and In the Moment, both done for International Anthem, the Chicago label by Makaya, I believe stand out as contemporary classics that we'll still be looking back at 20, 30 years from now as being typical of this period. Tell us about those albums and how they fit into your career.
Yeah, so In the Moment was really maybe it's the first record that I think got me some more attention, but that came out of really the process of me like investigating technology and sampling and using the computer as a mode of composition. And we were doing a series with early International Anthem, pre-label its existence, but with Scotty McNeese, and we put together a series that I wanted to call Spontaneous Composition, where we're basically improvising within some form, not pure open improvisation, but some sort of open compositional ideas. And we played every week, and we recorded these. And, I was at a time in my career where I had a record out, I was playing a bit, I was touring with some different artists. But, when I came home from my gigs, like local gigs in Chicago or whatever, I'd go in my studio and I would be sampling stuff and I'd be making beats and really like investigating this like a different way of making music, or I just really wanted to be in conversation with other style of music that was really inspiring to me. And I feel like when I kind of put my playing and kind of stuff I was experimenting at home, just for my own personal passion, that I didn't really have a professional space, but when I kind of put those things together, it felt really like myself, and it wasn't like I felt like I had to make a record for like a jazz, straight ahead jazz space, or I had to make a beat record, and because this was one of these things that was always a difficult,
either or,
and a difficult thing to figure out how to navigate, the genre in the professional realm. It's one thing, music can sound like anything, but genre is a way to sell music and how we categorize it, how we talk about it. And so, I always felt kind of a pressure of like what I was supposed to do as a young musician and what you're allowed to do and what's okay. And at the same time, I was getting this stuff as a young musician saying, well, if you enter jazz, you're not going to make any money. There's no career there. There's nothing, nowhere for you to go. And I never wanted to kind of believe that. I thought that was so. I think whenever I tried to put all that stuff away, it all kind of came together for me in that record, particularly In the Moment. And then Universal Beings was just a development from that concept, and this was like it was working for me and creatively, and I think I was getting a lot of this conversation around Chicago being, the new jazz thing. It's like, oh, it's Chicago, and people were excited about my record, or the new jazz thing, and it was, what was happening in London, or the West Coast Get Down. There was all these kind of like hip, young jazz things. Everybody wanted to, have very declarative statements of like, this is the new thing, or this is the new area. And, I've been traveling and playing with people from all over my whole career. I feel like I'm not really from Chicago, and I was really getting a lot of press. People say, this is a Chicago guy. And so, doing Universal Beings, I played similar concept of improvising, but in multiple cities, in London, in LA, in New York, and in Chicago, with different musicians. And that was just kind of trying to break some of all the conversation around there, or get in that conversation, and as well as connect with my past, like my parents, who were musicians who traveled they migrated from different places. My mother came from Hungary, And I went to France and met my dad and did music with him, and then came to the States. And, I just think it's really easy for us to think about the scene, and everybody says, oh, it's like, if you don't move to New York, you're never going to make it. And I would see a lot of young Chicago musicians. It was like, when they felt ready, they would pick up and like go off to New York like this was a thing. And I've always been connected with variety of scenes that aren't necessarily that's the one place. There's so many different scenes. Like in Portland's a great example. There's so many great players here, and we can overlook that when we're just thinking of, these certain places like LA or New York. Chicago can get in that too, where people can get overlooked as a second city or a smaller place. And so by collaborating with different people, and to me, it's about that's the music. It's always traveled, and it's brought in the community.